Hey everyone, how's everyone doing today? We're here with morning coffee for the soul, but it's not morning. I'm sorry about that. I could not be here earlier, but I am here now. I hope that whoever did not catch our show today at 8:30 a.m. Can at least get this show today. So anyway, we have been talking about for the past 5 weeks, really for the past 4 weeks, about the 12 steps that the AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous, they have established this program for people to really get out of this terrible vice, for people to really recover from such a painful vice that takes really the lives of so many. But we are adapting the 12 steps of the AA into depression and anxiety. So for every week we have been talking about which step that is from the Alcoholics Anonymous, and we are adding this and enhancing those steps with knowledge that we can use for depression and anxiety. So this is week 5, and the steps that we have talked about is the step 1 for AA is to really admit your problem. So with depression and anxiety, we admit that we are depressed, that we are anxious, but we can admit whatever it is of our fallacies, of moral fallacies, ethical fallacies, any kind of mental illness that we want to cure ourselves. We have to admit whatever it is problem that we have. Step 2 was that we had to really believe that a power superior than us could give us our sanity back. So we have to believe in God, and He has to be a step for our recovery and whatever it is that we're doing. Step 3, we had to really give ourselves and really surrender all that we need, all that we are, to God's will, and also take action in this step to change whatever it is that we're trying to to change in our lives. Step 4 of the AA that we're adapting was last week, and we talked about really taking a moral inventory and really seeing what have I done, what have worked, what hasn't worked, and really everything arises from our instincts. Most of the pain that we suffer is because we have not in some way been able to dominate really our instincts, our wishes, our sensories. So in today's step 5 from the AA, they say that we must admit before in front of God, to ourselves, and to others the exact nature of our fallacies, of our faults. So this is step 5 of the Alcoholics Anonymous. So what does that mean? What does that mean for spiritists, and what does that mean for those suffering from depression and those suffering from anxiety? Well, one thing is, it means that before anything, God must be put first. And we can't hide our past from God. We can't really hide. We can have our past dormant for a while, for a reincarnation, for an incarnation, but we do have an idea of all our past if we look at everything that kind of calls us. So we know everything that, of all the vices, anything that you feel more invited to, you know that it has a stronger connection with our past, and that is something that we need to work. So first, we must admit the exact nature of our fallacies, of anything that holds us back. But we have to really, and that brings into prayer, we have to admit in front of God, to God, with God, we have to really admit, what is it that I need to work on? What are my shadows? What are my, those things that I don't even want to admit about me, but what are those things that I really have to bring from the inside out to God and talk to Him or her? Talk to God, as we know it's the supreme being, and He's so merciful. So that's the first step. If we're suffering from depression, if we are an over anxious person, we must admit it, and then we must also tell God how we're feeling. Jesus has said, knock and the door will be open. So we have to present why is it that we are doing the things that we're doing? In the case of alcoholics, a lot of times that you can, and that's on the book of the AA, it's not the alcohol. A lot of times you don't use the alcohol, but it's really whatever your moral fallacy, you want to cover that with alcohol. So perhaps in our anxieties, what is the deep cause of our anxiety? It has to be within us. What is the cause of our depression? What am I running from? What is so painful? If we don't do this search and we don't bring this out to God and really understand that, it's very hard to find a cure. And the second, so you have to do that with God, with yourself. How many of us are not really ready to be true to who we really are, to ourselves, to really say, look, I have some fallacies. I have some things that I really need to get out of the darkness and really bring to light. And we know that a lot of times what you're not aware is really what ends up dominating your behavior. So we really have to, again, question in Kardec's Spiritist book, what is this way of progressing? Well, know thyself. You have to really know yourself. And that means knowing your shadows, knowing what Jung would say your shadows, that dormant part of your personality that you really don't want to deal with, that you just kind of pushed back. So we need to bring that to our awareness. And the third, it says also to admit in front of others. Now this is really interesting because a lot of support groups, a lot of, again, the AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous, they are such a tight knitted, in a way, not a tight knitted, they're welcoming to all, but they become such a beautiful community because they allow you to be who you are. And you already admitted to who you are. In the case of AA, if you're an alcoholic and you're in the group, people most of the time have gone through what you have gone. So they offer you compassion and understanding. And you, on the other hand, has this duty to be true to who you are, to your fallacies, to what is bringing you to drink, not blaming alcohol, but really searching within ourselves any kind of fallacies that you have that you need to work on. So in a case of depression and anxiety, and we know with Kardec, the law of society, we need people. If at anything, you need to have one person in this world, and this is a counsel by the AA, and I think it's also the counseling from the Spirits on the Spirits book. You live in society. Pick one person. If you have, one person you can trust, or perhaps a complete stranger that will probably never see you again. But you must tell them everything. And in a way that you will get all of the, I would say, all of the garbage, all of the things that are in there, that you will put it out and you will bring to light. And it's really a moment of freedom when you start speaking of things that have been hidden, a lot of times even from yourself, because pride blinds us from seeing our own shortcomings. So when you sit next to, and it could be a therapist, it could be a sponsor in a case of AA, it could be a stranger that does not have to know who you are. It could be an anonymous person on so many different services that are offered on the phone. It could be in a fraternal counseling, and every Spiritist center usually has fraternal counseling where you can really get your shadows out, so light can be brought into you, and knowledge. So if you're not completely honest and really bring out in public, it could be to one person that you trust, but allow them to listen to you and allow yourself to be completely honest. So if you're anxious, really talk about this anxiety with someone. Why are you so anxious? Perhaps it's because you want perfection in everything, and everything that's not perfect, you are pushing for things to be the way you believe is perfect. And there is no perfection really on this planet Earth. There was one perfect man, but other than that, although everything is perfect in its own essence, there is no perfection in us. We are perfectible, and one day we will be. But perhaps that is the source of anxiety. In the case of depression, what if this depression that I'm feeling is tied to the fear of criticism? What if my depression is tied to even pride? Someone has said something so painful or so that ruined my reputation or whatever it might be, that I decided to take refuge within myself, and I just shut off the world. I turned the lights off. And maybe the whole root of my depression could be pride. That is one of many. And again, it is a mental illness. So we're not talking about it's all physical, it's all spiritual, it's all emotional, but it's really a combination. And we know that every single illness does begin in the spirit. So we have to search for these moral fallacies that we have in the spirit, not just, again, when it presents themselves in our physical illnesses. So once I get this, all these admissions of everything that I'm not practicing according to the law of God, then humility sets in, because I see that I'm just trying, I'm doing the best that I can. And now I can admit that I have fallacies, that I don't want to blame alcohol on my bad behavior. I'm having a bad behavior before the alcohol comes in, but it gives me numbness to enhance it, perhaps. So I can't blame being cruel on my anxiety, because anxiety doesn't make anybody cruel. I have to have cruelty within me and use my anxiety to enhance that cruelty, so I'm able to say awful things because something wasn't the way I wanted. Or the depression, perhaps I am using this lights off outside as a means to not deal with reality. And I don't want to deal with reality because of something that has happened in my past. And maybe I could be the reason and the key to free myself from this depression. This is not a blame game, my friends. I'm just saying this for us to really search our moral fallacies in whatever situation that we are at. And that's, again, being brought from the book for the 12 steps of the AA. So if you think about it, when you talk to someone, support groups, when you're able to express yourself in a safe and a trusting, in a trusting environment, really, things, you start to really let go of also a lot of guilt. Because once you admit your fallacies, you can really understand what you have to change, and you can understand why you've been behaving the way you are behaving without just giving blame, but also accept the part of the responsibility you have in that, whatever it is that's happening. If you do, and we all know in Spiritism, it's all about the law of cause and effect. So there are no villains and there are no victims, but there's cause and there's effect. So again, we are not alone. Kardec brings to us the law of society. We need each other. We need to really be together. We need to, I would say, get all of our essences, get really the person that we truly are, and put it out there, and allow some people in your life, if one person, to really see you for who you have been. Oh, okay, wait, we have a comment here from Steve. Hi, Steve. I just saw him. I was just at a lecture in West Palm Beach. Let's see. Steve is saying here, I worked the 12 steps before I ever heard about Spiritism. In my 11th step process, searching for conscious contact with God of my understanding, I eventually found the Spirit's book. Wow. Since then, I've been learning and studying the divine laws, and it's been a wonderful complement to the spiritual principles I've learned in my recovery. This is a great topic. It's really exciting to hear you talk about it. Thanks, Steve. And we've been talking every week. It's early, 8:30 a.m. It's early. But every Sunday, 8:30 a.m., for the past 5 Sundays, we've talked. It's here on Kardec Radio, right here on the Facebook, if you can look at the past videos. Every week, we're talking about one of the steps and tying them to depression and anxiety. So yes, I mean, hey, kudos to you. You know, you were there, you understood, and now we know the 12 steps work because the spiritual content in it, God in it. So with the 5th step, my friends, I wanted to really leave it here. You are not alone, and you don't have to hide who you are. Kardec already is very clear on the law of society. Kardec is really clear on the need for support from each other. And Kardec is very clear in his answers, and the spirits are very clear in the answers they gave to Kardec, that we need to get to know ourselves better. And the more that we give excuses to our fallacies, the less we can progress. So in the case of AA, once I stop blaming alcohol and I really take an inventory of my own being, and once I really bring whatever it is, the true natures of my faults, alcohol is not a nature of a fault. I have to have a nature of a fault to need the alcohol to numb it. So once we don't need the numbing agent, once we know, then we won't need a numbing agent because we can work straight in it. We don't have to use any outside things to really hide ourselves from who we are, from whatever it is that we need to work. So in the case of depression, in the case of anxiety, let's work on that. Let's really look at ourselves and say, I need to take a moral inventory. That's in step 4. And then today in step 5, which is week 5 today, I need to take this and really verbalize it. I need to find someone to really, for that person to understand me and for me to really talk about myself. And so as I talk, I will feel a lot lighter, because also most people will understand, and I'm sure you will pick someone who will be picked because of that quality of understanding. Okay, so I wanted to leave this out to you, my friends. I know it's not a long talk. We usually do for 15-20 minutes. Next Sunday, I may not be here in the morning. I will try to deliver the show still on Sunday. I'll be flying back, so with the planes and where I am, it might be difficult. So that's why I'm so late today. But I hope that you have thought about step 5 and really think about it again. We need to admit before God, with ourselves, or before ourselves, and before another human being, the true nature of our fallacies, of our faults, of our moral shortcomings. So we need to verbalize it. We need to talk about it. We need to be real. Let's think of baptism. When John the Baptist was baptizing, people were required to say their sins out loud. Now think about it. Why is that? Because you need to admit your fallacies, your shortcomings, your faults, your moral, anything negative, anything that you know it isn't really the path of God. You needed to say it out loud so others could hear, you could hear, and you could make a clear conscience decision to change. So unless you do that, it's very hard to change. And the 5th step is one of the hardest steps on the AA, because not many people want to say it out loud. Not many people want to really, they may think about it, they may take an inventory about it, but it's very hard for people to truly express what it is that whatever the little monsters that are inside of them. And we can't get them out unless we really talk and we are honest with what these little monsters, I use this, but we know what it is. These little things that are so far away from what goodness is. Unless we admit and we talk about it, it's very hard to really bring them to reality. So the baptism had one of this purpose. You want to cleanse and start a new person. So you need to talk, you need to admit. And you're not alone. We can do this in the right environment. pick a spirited center that you can trust, someone that you can trust, and maybe have a fraternal counseling, and just allow yourself to admit to yourself, but before that, to God, and really say it to another human being, and accept counsel, accept good advice. So, Steve said that in his fifth step with his sponsor was a major turning point in my life. When I worked my fifth step with my sponsor, it was a major turning in my life. I had secrets that I thought I'd take with me to the grave, and when I exposed them to my sponsor, it was like I've been carrying a baggage my whole life. And that day I let it go. It no longer controlled my life. That is exactly it. So Stephen, you are perfect to be here today because you walk the walk. And again, my friends, if you can't say it, and you have to be honest and say it all, again, to a sponsor, to a professional, to a psychotherapist, to a spirited center counselor, you must get it out. And it's all of it. You can't leave anything behind. Okay? So I hope that this morning coffee was good. I know it's in the afternoon, but if you haven't seen the other ones, try to catch up. It's here on the Facebook, here on Kardec Radio. And later on today, I'll do this in Portuguese on my own Facebook. Okay? Thank you. I might be here next Sunday, but for sure the Sunday after. Okay? I won't be missing any, I think, for the rest of the year. Thank you everybody who was here, and thank you everyone who's been watching this. If you have any input, like Steve, please always share a little something about your experience. Put any links that you want, but let's help others be aware of these 12 steps, and especially when it talks about our anxieties, our depression, our emotions, because they can help in everything. We are never alone, and when we talk to someone, we usually find out that that someone also can identify with us in a lot of ways, and that is such a relief. Once we know we're not alone, we can hold hands and walk together. So let's do this. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.